Hello and welcome back to part 2 of our live election update. We're back in the studio and we've got new presenters with us. To my right is Chris Leroux, who you may have seen in the gallery earlier on. We're multitasking today. Multitasking is fine. And then to my left, we have Amie Woodyatt and Joshua Thompson, who is directing a few minutes ago.
Evening, everyone.
Multi-talented. Absolutely multi-talented. So, Chris, what have you made of everything so far today?
I was very surprised. I looked up and said something that cannot be repeated on live TV when I saw the exit poll. It's something that I don't think, at least my sources in the Labour Party predicted at all. I think the Conservatives, I don't necessarily think expected as large a result as they did. But here we are, but with only a few seats announced. Again, as I said earlier, it's still early days. There is no way for us to be able to predict what's going to happen. The exit poll is the best result we have so far.
I think there's no way we can predict what's going to happen. It's probably going to be just throughout this evening. I think it's been pretty unprecedented, considering Blythe. But you know, we'll see how that goes for the rest of the evening. If we have any other interesting seats.
And I say, following on from that, like at the start of the night, we were interested to see whether, talk of a Labour upset up in, sorry, not a Labour upset, Conservative upset in Labour kind of north kind of heartlands. It looks like, based on voting intention from Sunderland, Blythe Valley, that could be being realised. So talk of the Labour's red wall falling in the northeast of Wales, the Midlands and North England. So it looks like, based on our exit poll predictions, that could happen. So
it looks like we've had, in the half an hour break, we've only actually had 4 declarations, which for me is quite impressive. We seem to have done this quite well. We seem to be tactically choosing the best times to go off air, have a coffee and chill out for a little bit. Sadly, we don't have the stamina of those, such as Jeremy Vine, Laura Koonsberg, and obviously the BBC greats. But there have been four or so results, all of which have gone the way we expected, but majorities have changed and switched. Those being Sunderland Central, which has been a hold, Middlesbrough, hold again for Labour, Swindon North, a Conservative hold, but with a massively increased majority there, and Washington and Sunderland West, where Labour, the majority's gone down to 3,000. This is the picture we've been seeing all night, and it's continuing.
Oh yeah, I think kind of continuing on from what we were saying before, Labour are probably shaking in their boots, and Conservatives will be taking a huge feeling of positivity from this. They will be absolutely loving it. It's giving them confidence, not only from obviously the exit poll, it's cementing that completely, and I think Labour should be quite scared, and I think Labour supporters probably will be looking at what's going on and going, this isn't going to be a good night for us.
Let's just have a look at Washington and Sunderland West a little bit more specifically. Not quite as dramatic as the effects that are going on obviously in Washington in the US with the impeachment of Donald Trump, but it's still pretty stark. So a majority back in 2017 of 12,940. 12,940. The MRP poll predicted, a 14% majority. This is not the case. In fact, what we've seen is only a majority of 3,700. The majority here has gone down by 9,000 votes.
Yeah, and I think that could be, really stark for later on votes, because if we're seeing kind of these early on seats, which are normally, strong Labour heartlands, then this effect could certainly cascade down the country.
And again, we've got another really specific point here about the Brexit parties, obviously what Ben was saying earlier, that Howard Brown, who ran for the Brexit party here in this constituency, 5,439 votes for him. If he hadn't have run and those votes had gone to the Conservative Party, let's say, or the majority of them gone to the Conservative Party, the Conservatives would have won this seat. Are actually the Brexit Party preventing the Conservative Party from having not only what we're seeing here as a kind of small landslide, but a Blair-esque 1997 style landslide of 200 odd seats?
Yeah, but I think what's really interesting with that is there was, all the talk of the Tories squeezing the Brexit Party vote, and you saw that with the polls with the last few weeks in their campaign. The other thing is obviously the Lib Dem revival, which everyone was kind of talking about, is this on the cards and is going to happen? Because they went into this campaign with quite a sort of strong resurgence in the poll, I think, about 15%. Although as the election campaign's gone on, it looks like their vote has been squeezed, perhaps by Labour. But as it's turning out, it looks like then maybe going to the Tories. Who knows? I mean, we're going to have to wait and see for some of the Lib Dem targeted seats and see whether that actually turns out to be the case. But whether this election is going to leave them with a stronger foundation for them to build on the future still remains unknown, I think.
Another, I think, important factor about this, and I'm not going to ask you, Amie, on this one, it's more relevant for you, but obviously relevant for all of us in society as well, is that we've actually had a record number of female candidates as well in this election. 33.8% of candidates are female. This is still not obviously what we want to see. It's actually lower than the number of female MPs in Parliament. In fact, you see a lot of the main parties fielding female-only lists and encouraging female candidates to get into the House of Commons. 5 candidates were non-binary or gender neutral. 3 for the Green Party, 1 for Labour, and 1 for the Liberal Democrats as well. This is a record, for female candidates. Is this an improvement, or are we still lagging quite behind where we really should be?
I think it can definitely. There's always room for improvement. I think it's nice to see more women getting involved. I hope that even more women will get involved in the future. Obviously, I'm the only woman sat on the panel at the moment, but I think generally seeing more women in those positions will hopefully encourage more women to run in future. And I think it's also really nice that we actually have the acceptance of non-binary people running as well, because that's really nice to have that inclusivity and make sure that we recognise them in the kind of running in politics, because obviously recognising that in actual general politics hopefully will help that in greater society. But yeah, I think it's nice that women generally are trying to run more. I think it would be nice to see more people. I think there is room for improvement. But hopefully women can do reasonably well. I think that possibly with the Conservatives, if they do get more seats, it may not go so well, but I hope that even if they do get in, if the polls are correct and they do get that majority, then hopefully they will help women kind of rise up through the party and make sure that we have kind of more representation within government and Parliament itself.
Now we've had another declaration come in, this time from Newcastle upon Tyne North. And although, yes, the story again is a massively reduced majority. Previously it was 14,900, it's now gone down to 5,700 for the Labour Party. 9,000 votes, again, less than they had before. The story here actually is the increased turnout. There's been 11% increased turnout here in Newcastle upon Tyne North. Is this actually kind of a story of this election that we're seeing reasonably high turnouts? We're seeing almost 70% in most constituencies, a number we've not really reached for a fair few years.
I think it's even weirder considering this is the second election in 2 years. I don't think it's something that is normally found in the UK, but I think because there's been so much focus on this is like the last election in the Conservative words to get Brexit done, and it's very much as you said earlier with Sky News saying that it was they were calling it the Brexit election. I think it's almost forced people to go out and vote because they go, yes, this is the finally we can get rid of all this arguing and just decide once and for all.
So voters' turnout in Putney has now gone up to 77.4%. That's gone up from 72% in 2017. That's a 5% increase. Battersea, a very Remain seat, has also gone up by 4%. 75.8% compared to 71% in 2017. This is an angry Remain vote now. These are 2 seats which are heavily Remain. We're expecting maybe not just an angry Brexiteer vote, but an angry Remain vote too.
Oh, absolutely. I don't by any respect, think that it's a Brexit vote in terms of Leave. I definitely think there's a mixture between Remain and Leave. I don't think that it's one-sided at all.
Yeah, it's interesting on that point. I think there may be an element of a Lib Dem protest vote as part of the Remain. and whether that has taken away from Labour's majority. I mean, as we see in Newcastle, Newcastle upon Tyne North, their majority has been halved from 10,000 to 5,000. That's major. And in marginal seats for Labour, any majority like that could just be wiped out later on. So,
I think this is what we're seeing across the country. This picture of actually the turnout's going up, people are voting more, but maybe not voting in the way we maybe expected them to vote. That's the beauty of a democracy, isn't it? They don't vote, people don't vote the way you tell them to vote. As the classic Theresa May quote was from 2017. She told people to vote for her. They didn't choose to.
I think that's interesting, though, that people aren't necessarily voting how people are being told to vote, but actually they're voting tactically. And there are many people I know have gone out and voted tactically, not necessarily for the parties that they agree with or for the parties that they want to be leading Parliament, but they are voting so that other parties don't get in. And I think that that's a huge kind of protest to make sure that essentially either Labour or Conservatives don't get in. And I think because of that, the smaller parties probably will have lost out on quite a few votes because of that protest.
Halton, another seat that's now just declared. The Conservatives again have gaining votes there. They're now on 10,000 votes. It's never a seat that we're ever going to win. But the Labour Party have gone down to 29,000 votes. You know, these kind of numbers, okay, they've increased their actual number of votes, but their vote percentage, the vote share has gone down and decreased. The majority is only 18,000 compared to what it was before, at 25,000. This is a big factor. Maybe more people are voting Labour, but more people voting against Labour, and that's possibly a worry for them in the marginal seats, especially in the north. They've seen today that actually, there are still the same people voting for Labour. They're very traditional Labour voters, but more generally, people aren't attracted to the party anymore, and that's a worry.
Yeah, I think this goes back to maybe a key point midway through the election campaign where we actually saw Labour's strategy change. I mean, the Tories have always focused on Brexit being their key message, but Labour, I think, maybe underestimated the willingness of Leave voters to switch from Labour to Conservative. And obviously, with 2 weeks ago, they tried to change this, particularly trying to focus in Leave voting areas. And that's one thing that the Conservatives have really hammered home. I mean, Boris Johnson's been up in the north areas of England, the Midlands, trying to hammer home this message of, look, if we don't have a Conservative majority, then you're not going to get your result, as we saw. This goes back again to Newcastle. I mean, they voted to leave 57%, and clearly that swayed their voting intention by halving their majority. So I think this being dubbed the Brexit election is clearly being realised, and I think political strategy-wise that maybe the Labour Party have underestimated this.
Exactly, but the core issues that often plague Labour, as people are concerned about the way they are running their party and Corbyn. They're not the same, and they're not issues that are quite as big as those that Labour try to help and try to combat, such as poverty, food hunger, and other issues like this as well. I think it's crucial that you end up with these, parties overall look at people who are in poverty, who are homeless, who need help and are desperate. To kind of improve their way of living and to help them out a little bit.
I think it's interesting to see how a lot of people I've spoken to over the course of being in the Students' Union is that those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are no longer voting Labour. And I think that's something that I don't think the Labour Party counted on. I think, and as you said with the campaigning, that a lot of bases focus on their general parties, but they don't necessarily look at the people who always vote that party. They focus on those who are going to switch, and they don't focus on the people who have always traditionally voted that way. And I think that the Labour Party have necessarily underestimated the mobilisation that they should have done within their own party.
Well, with over the last year, from 2019, 1.6 million people used emergency food supplies given to them by charities such as the Trussell Trust across the UK. And issues like this are only set to increase. And a week or so ago, some of our team went down to LSU Action's soup kitchen, where they help homeless people and people who need help and a good meal on a Sunday evening from around Loughborough. To premiere this video, to take a look, you're the first to see it.
so we'll like curve up and go. Four times, that's what four times. Take a two for a second.
We've got lots of so like maths, physics, and
It's quite refreshing actually. Yeah. Someone volunteered because normally we come like as soon as we ask people at the board, they're like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. No one wants to do it. No one like artists. And then you're like, yes, they're like, yes, someone's going to do it. Something I can do. We got some pretty fancy things.
That's a load of really good things about Soup Kitchen. First off, you know, it's something you can always go home feeling really great about yourself after a Sunday evening. Helping out the users and seeing everyone respond really well to what you're doing and to the food that you get out. It's super nice. Also, you meet a load of great people. So throughout the 2 years, I've had hundreds of volunteers come in, made a load of friends, and it's just awesome. Yeah.
Apart from what I think everyone knows in terms of getting to feed people in the community, I mean, most people think they're all homeless and don't technically have to be homeless, a lot of them just can't get a hot meal, so that's obviously a great thing to be able to provide them with a hot meal every single Sunday.
So Soup Kitchen's really, really important. It's not only important to our volunteers to get out and do things on a Sunday and get to meet each other, but it's mostly important because of the community. A lot of the users that come and use the Soup Kitchen, they come regularly, we get to know them, we get to kind of understand what it is that they're going through. They talk to us a lot about the things that are happening, they tell us when somebody's passed away, who might have passed away on the streets quite recently. And it can be really hard hitting for us, but it must be so much worse for them, and for us to be able to get that real understanding of what it is that they're going through and what's happened in their lives has brought them here. A lot of the users that we have are really open and honest, and like today we didn't have very many users come at all, which is a shame for us, mostly because we have no idea where they are, if they're okay, what they're doing, if they've got a bed to sleep in, which most likely they don't, which is what hurts the most. And speaking to some of the users today, they told us that it's probably because they're in prison, because at least then they'll have a bed and somewhere to stay for the night, which obviously hurts, but you completely get it. Like, why wouldn't they? If that's where they can go and they're going to be safe there, then we want them to be as safe as possible. I know that a lot of people who come here regularly, we really care about the users here, and we just want the best for them. But on the Facebook.
Human.
This is the only form of stature. Just like middle-aged character, just like with the varsity.
Have you seen the round coffee?
My heart is warm.
Close.
So there we had a video showing all the excellent work that Action and volunteers here at the Students Union have been doing for the wider community. But related to the video, I think an important point for us to discuss is that maybe predominantly it's been assumed that Labour's kind of core votership is the people on the lower end of the socio-economic background, and that maybe Boris's message of Brexit being the hold-up and causing kind of this rise in poverty and dependency on food banks that we've seen. So maybe the message that the Conservatives have tried to put across of Brexit being the issue that's causing this, that maybe that's been felt, and they've kind of emotionally felt forced to vote the way they have, maybe switching from Labour to Conservative.
Or not even to vote at all.
Or not even to vote at all, yeah, of course.
I think, although we've got an increased turnout, there are still 30-odd% of people in a lot of these constituencies or more who aren't voting at all. I think that's, when you look at the big picture, that's quite a concern, really.
Yeah, definitely. But I think going back to this, that this goes back to maybe strategy, definitely from the Conservatives, that maybe their long-term strategy of trying to get Brexit as their main focal point and their clear message across has been a success.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, as you can see, and as the results are coming in tonight, I know we've technically got eight Labour seats in and 2 Tory seats. If you're looking from an impartial point of view, you've not tuned in so far, you think, wow, Labour are doing amazingly. I'll point out they're not, just to clarify. And I think when you're seeing this picture, with the fact we've already got 1 seat lost that we didn't expect to lose, the Labour didn't expect to lose, sorry, and the Conservatives gained seats they didn't expect to gain. It's an interesting change, and we're seeing a different dynamic in British politics, where actually people aren't really being divided by, socioeconomic background. Maybe it's more about kind of their experiences, their education, their age possibly as well. And obviously there's the issue of Brexit as well.
Perhaps this is the period of defreezing of the party system.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was interesting. Earlier we were talking about vote share changes, and it's interesting to see that so far the average declared so far is that the Conservatives have gained by 2.1% overall so far. Labour have reduced their vote share by 9.9%. Which is a significant number. But what's interesting to see is that the Brexit Party have gained by 6.6%. I assume basically the polls off that is based off what UKIP previously got in the previous election. And then the Lib Dems have gained by 3%. So it's interesting to see how perhaps the parties who are very decisively on one side or the other have gained the seats more, whereas the Labour Party, who for a very long period of time has been, we're not really sure, we'll see what the people say, have lost the vote because they've not had perhaps a decisive standpoint, which is interesting, because in 2017 we were looking at this and we were saying a completely different thing. We were saying, well, we thought all the UKIP voters would go to the Conservative Party, but instead they went to the Labour Party. This is bizarre because it's completely reversed this time.
Yeah, I mean, this goes to the issue of people no longer voting on traditional party lines, or maybe how they would have traditionally voted, whereas now the issue of Europe is clearly a defining factor. And the interesting point you said there is that with the Brexit Party share vote up, we would perhaps assume, and it would have been wrong to assume, that would have taken away from the Conservative. But clearly that's taken away from Labour, perhaps. So it'd be interesting to see how that breaks down later on.
And then the true question will really be, what's going to happen to the Brexit Party vote share? When let's face it, we're now in a situation where if the exit poll is correct, and if the trends we've seen tonight all do carry out, and we still do have to have an air of caution. We are only 10 seats in.
Still early in the
making these grand claims. It feels like it's longer, trust me. But there's 5,000 votes in Washington and Sunderland West. There are 6 up to 10,000 votes the Brexit Party have been getting. They've got a 10% lead, technically a 10% gain on what they had before of nothing, which shows they're getting about 10% of the vote currently in the seats that we're looking at, which obviously are Labour strongholds and ones they are participating in. It'll be interesting to see where those votes go afterwards, after Brexit Party becomes a little bit more redundant. Will it go to independent party candidates? Will it go to candidates that aren't as polarising as a Labour or Conservative candidate or a Lib Dem? Will they go to the Green Party, interestingly, or will they go to, will they return to UKIP, which will let's face it, will probably still exist regardless of what happens? Yeah,
most likely. Interesting news story coming in at the moment. In the Labour camp, there seems to be kind of a blame game going on already, whether it's Labour's stance on Brexit or whether you blame Mr Corbyn himself. So there's talk of, Jeremy Corbyn hasn't made his appearance yet at Labour HQ, and there's already talk of whether we're going to see a battle for leadership by the end of tonight, because obviously, results like this, could easily dictate whether Jeremy Corbyn stays as the head of the party or leaves. So there's talk of MacDonald delaying former leadership challenges maybe for potentially months, perhaps in the hope that they get stronger candidates coming forward, which maybe then might bring back their traditional base.
We've got another result that just come in as well. South Shields has been held by Labour, no surprise there. A very strong Labour heartland seat, but as we've only got 11 or 12 seats in so far. I feel like we should continue to talk about the ones that do come in. The big story here again is the majority, down by 5,000 to 9,500. another interesting dynamic about this one was that there were two candidates, both with the same name, both Thompson, like our very own Josh Thompson here, one of which was Brexit Party and gained 6,000 votes, but one of which was an independent and got 3,600 votes. A really good taking for an independent candidate in a competitive seat like South Shields. And we've got our own independent here, running in Loughborough, Queenie T. And I believe that we have an interview with her now down at the Count.
Yes, we are here with the one and only Queenie T herself. Queenie, how have you found this election?
Well, I have difficulty finding my glasses, so finding the election has been quite difficult. So,
was it Labour MP Gareth Snell? He said, a question was asked to him, is it time for Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell to go? He replied yes.
Well, that is perfect.
The Labour MP, and he reckons he's going to fall to a Conservative candidate.
From constituents?
Laura Kunsberg as well. Across seats so far, Tories have been up 3...
they've embraced me. And they've been very kind, and I've found that there's been a lot of love in Loughborough. So I'd like to thank those constituents for taking me and embracing me. So yes.
And in your search to find the election, have you found any votes for yourself?
Well, I do hope not. I entered into this party for ensuring that I didn't get any votes at all. So I'll be disappointed if people haven't voted responsibly by voting for me, because I am a wasted vote. But maybe people have voted for me for protest reasons, or maybe because they were frustrated by the system. So I'm glad I was here for them.
Because I was speaking to your campaign manager earlier, who said that it's a great thing to do because you can, basically.
Yes, anyone can do this if they can raise the funds to do it. I don't actually have any money, but other people have raised the funds. I raised £3.60, and from what I understand, the rest of it was raised by somebody. I'm not sure who it was, but anyone can do it unless you are a council member or you're a policeman. So if you're anyone else, you can do it. And that's what I'd like to demonstrate, is do it. If you've got strong views, then get out there. You don't have to join a party, one of the main parties. You can create your own party. And that's what I went and that's what I've done, my own Tees party.
And you've certainly brightened up our election, which is something that we are very thankful for. Do you wish that other politicians had the same level of fun that you do, or do you like that they're generally more serious?
Well, it is serious fun. It's this business. It is serious fun, and maybe the other party managers, they need to find more fun, because you can do. It is an oxymoron, but you can have serious fun. So I think there needs to be more balance, really. So I'd encourage that.
Do we want to be seeing, therefore, more politicians that have robins on their hats and giant silver, I don't even know how to, ribbon?
It's a gift tag. It's really because we're close to Christmas, and I'm a gift.
You are a gift to this election, yes.
Yes, that's absolutely. The other party managers, they have their rosettes, but perhaps they should have bigger ones. Bigger rosettes.
I agree. It would certainly, if we had more candidates like you, then we would be having a lot more fun down in the Count.
It is quite dull down there. It's the worst party I've ever been to. I've been to some all-nighters, let me tell you. And this all-nighter, there's no entertainment, there's no music, there's no DJ. I mean, you're better off down Revs tonight. Yes.
Other nightclub institutions are, of course, available. Like you said, it's going to be a long night. We're still expecting the results to come in at about 4 or 5 a.m., but we will still be there bringing you all the results as they come in, along with Queenie T.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you, Queenie, as well. An independent who doesn't want to win any votes, interesting. Not a candidate that's not a usual thing for a candidate to do in an election, but it's fantastic to have as many people as we can in the election. I think she's definitely brightened up the election, which I think is absolutely needed in these modern times where politics can become all but serious.
Yeah, I think it's very nice to have someone that champions biscuits and tea.
Definitely needed.
I think it's good also that while she is bringing art into the election, I think it's very nice that she's very much got some serious points, and that she's like, make sure you consider who you're voting for, make sure you look at what policies they have, very much consider how they're going to affect the local demographic, how it's going to affect you personally, how it's going to affect the university in general, or how it's going to affect the town. She's very much
I think we're certainly going to get some candidates be interested. If not the candidates,
well,
then
you know, we do have some independents like Jeff Thompson. You know, making sure that they've got votes, getting 3,600. That's very, very good. I think she's come out and she's like, yeah, I'm coming here. I'm going to say some things about
can try.
tea and biscuits.
I did ask earlier to sort of.
Yeah, and I think that was really well received
yeah.
at our question time debate we held here at LSU. I think we can all agree on that.
She certainly took the biscuit.
Yeah.
That's all we can say.
I do love that she was sat knitting on stage.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
It was absolutely fantastic.
I wish I could host a political debate and knit at the same time.
Yes.
Two talents that I don't have.
Multitasking.
We have another seat declaration. Nuneaton. The Conservatives have held Nuneaton with an increased majority of 9,000, which brings the majority there in Nuneaton to 13,100. The majority of those votes taken away from Labour. Again, this is a trend that we're not. This is a trend that's continuing, and Broxbourne has now come in. An interesting seat based on the fact that this is the seat where a lot of controversy came around due to the changing candidates here, with an independent Anna Soubry and others in this constituency. Broxbourne, a result there that's just come in with an increased majority for the Conservative Party.
It's a continuing trend, as you said, and I think it's something that we're going to see for the rest of the evening. I feel part of me really wants to go, okay, look, we saw the exit poll, we all went, wow, and then went, oh no, we can't stick to that, because obviously it could change throughout the evening. But currently, what we're seeing, that's going to. Yeah. It's looking pretty strong for the Conservatives.
Although it's interesting on that point, there's been some chatter on Twitter of the Conservative vote actually underperforming based on exit poll results. So I think it was.
So I think that it's 3% was the predicted vote share increase as opposed to 6%.
However, consistently in every single election result so far, we've had around 9,000, between 9,000 and 4,000 votes, often around 7,000 to 9,000, going from Labour to the Conservative Party. And that is a flat trend. That's not changing in any of these seats, whether they're Tory, whether they're Labour. We've not yet had any Lib Dem seats or SNP seats, so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of changes with those. But it's very much a trend that's continuing here.
See, I think as we were talking about Broxbourne was declared, the votes from Labour, so they reduced their percentage by 5.7%. The Lib Dems increased their percentage in Broxbourne by 5.4%. So you could argue that the votes are going to the Liberal Democrats in this constituency at least, which again comes back to my point earlier when I said that there is a clear that people are voting for one or the other, Remain or Leave. And I think we can keep going back to this is the Brexit election. I think it's definitely turning out that way.
Again, Broxbourne, very heavily Leave seat, stuck in the middle of Hertfordshire. 66% of people voted to leave in Broxbourne. This is the Brexit election at the end of the day. Sky News were right with their publicising it as the Brexit election.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this goes back to strategy. The Labour Party might not have realised as early on when the election started, when it was called, that this is going to be the defining issue of this election. And maybe it's a case of their stance of wanting to be neutral, getting a new deal, and then putting that back to people with an option to remain. Clearly, that hasn't worked for them. And we've just heard some interesting news here. So the chairman of the Labour Party, Ian Lavery's seat in Wansbeck, has just gone to a full recount. So they could be in trouble there.
Absolutely could be. This is a realignment of British politics in the way it is now. We are seeing a complete change in the dynamic. We've not had a Conservative majority like the one we were expecting to get, I'll remind you again, since Margaret Thatcher. These are times that we've not seen since the 80s. And it really will change not only the way our futures will be and our futures will lie, but also the political system for many years to come.
Yeah, and going on from this, we've got to remember what will a Conservative majority mean? I mean, Boris Johnson has repeatedly said his oven-ready Brexit deal. We could be coming out of the EU by next month. They could get this through before Christmas if he's got this working majority, which the exit poll is suggesting. So he won't necessarily have to rely on so much support from the European Research Group or the kind of far-right Brexiteer group. Although it's less clear what will happen with Labour. It's already looking like a thumping loss for Corbyn and his allies, and some already making it clear that they want a change of direction within the party.
So do you think Labour should move towards a more pro-Brexit stance, with Brexit looking like it's going to happen now, or do you think Labour should kind of remain party? But again, is it also the left-right divide? This kind of the centrist Blairite kind of Labour Party succeeded for many, many years, and it's now looking like the attempted move to the far left, as some would say, and this is more radical side of Labour hasn't worked out for them.
Yeah, I mean, this was always slated as the manifesto that Jeremy Corbyn always wanted to have, and clearly that hasn't appealed to the core Labourship voters. But interestingly, on that point, the idea that which direction Labour want to go in might go back to the relationship between Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour membership being in support of him, but his members of Parliament and higher cabinet member or shadow cabinet members of his party not wanting to back him, perhaps. So I think there's a really kind of, it's a big dilemma for the Labour Party, and how they go from this election could set them back, the next 5-10 years, who knows? It's a defining time for them.
I know we talked about turnout quite a lot today, and I think turnout will remain a major fixture of this, but the Electoral Reform Society just posted initial figures from what they see so far in the turnout in the seats declared so far. And bear in mind, these are generally heavily Labour seats. But turnout looking like it's down from the peak of kind of 68.5%. It's looking like it's 62.6 so far. So it'll be interesting to see how this dynamic plays out. If it's just Conservative seats where this will play out, or if also in Labour seats as well, we'll end up with this slightly interesting, maybe reduction, increase in some areas of turnout. Because in Tory seats that have, in the seats where the Tories have won, it looks like turnout's up.
That's going to be interesting because I'm really, really hoping. I've seen, I've been able to vote in a couple of elections now. I'm really hoping that young people have gone out and voted. Maybe overall voter turnout has gone down, but I'm so hoping that young people the voter turnout has gone up, because we're currently still at university. We haven't gone home for the holidays yet, and there's so much push from the universities themselves, from students being like, oh, I'm going out to vote, you should just come along with me, and making sure that young people actually have their say and utilise democracy. So I'm hoping that by the end of the night, when we have kind of, the majority of the polls in, and we can kind of have a look at the demographics of who's been voting where and for who, I'm really hoping that we get young people actually increasing their voter turnout, because that would be really nice to see.
It's an interesting point, that, because obviously when the 2016 EU referendum was held, there would be a lot of people who couldn't vote on the Brexit referendum then, and now have the opportunity to vote. So whether their turnout has been for pro kind of Remain, whether we see a rise in the Lib Dem vote share for them, still yet to be seen. But that could be an interesting story, though.
Two big bits of news just come in. Our sources are telling us that Workington, this is a heavy Labour seat, is looking like almost a certain Conservative gain now from Labour. Tory candidate Mark Jenkinson was the UKIP candidate in 2015. He's now the Conservative candidate, and it looks like he'll be winning Workington. Workington, a seat which was heavily Labour, had a decent majority there. Now looks like it will be taken by the Conservatives. Another piece of news coming in as well. Wansbeck, a Labour hold. It is Ian Lavery, who is the Labour Party chairman. He has held this seat, but just by 814 votes. That's down from 10,435 votes that he had in the last election. He was pushed to the limits there by Jack Gebhard. If he'd have lost that seat, that would have been the Labour Party chairman losing his seat. You don't see that often. The chairmen of parties are stuck in the safest seats possible. You'll see that with the Conservative later on. This is unprecedented.
Is that one of the ones that was recounted?
Yeah, that was the one I went to.
I think one went to a full recount, I believe, yeah.
It's a loss of 15%.
Yeah.
That's a swing.
Which
Is a swing.
Other interesting news we're hearing from London. London seems to be that turnout is up from 2017, but Kensington, particularly, I think it was, not sure which part of Kensington, but anyway, Labour majority for Kensington 2017 was only 20 votes, so ultra marginal seat. And based on the national trend, we might assume that would swing to the Conservatives, but based on exit poll predictions and chatter from the area, that it looks like Labour are set to hold this, in part thanks to, I think it's the Lib Dem candidate who has split the Tory vote.
Interesting though, the Lib Dem candidate split the Tory vote, not the way around. Another bit of news coming in Duncan Smith expected to hold his Chingford seat, a reduced majority though. He's currently only got 2,400 in what is exactly a 50-50 Leave Remain seat. I think these are the seats that are going to be the main focus. It looks like he's going to have a reduced majority of maybe a few hundred. Again, this one might go to a recount. But again, these seats where it's 50-50, Remain Leave. These are the ones where actually, I think there's things working out here that people might have a reduced majority in the Conservative Party when Brexit is not the preferred option of the electorate.
I think it's going to be very interesting. Unfortunately, at the end of your night, when you can actually sit down and properly look at who's voted where, and actually go, hang on a minute, has this been a 50-50 on Brexit, or is this a university town where more students have been voting? And to be able to look at all the different dynamics of the vote, to actually see what has impacted this, because obviously a lot has changed. That's an understatement. But I think it's going to be interesting to actually look at the end of the night and go, hang on a minute, is there any kind of correlations on any places that are 50-50 on Brexit, and looking at who's voted and what are the demographics there, and why they voted that way. And it'll be interesting to see if that Brexit thing is playing a significant role.
Well, this is big. This one is big.
Oh boy.
Peterborough is looking like it will be a gain from the Conservative Party. The candidate Paul Bristow, who ran in the by-election earlier this year. And this is why this is such an important seat to look at the difference, because there was a by-election held in Peterborough only a few months ago, in June. This is a seat where we can look at a direct change from about 3 or 4 months, a key seat. Lisa Forbes won this by-election. It was because of a recall election, which Fiona Onasaya lost in 2019 to recall her after she was suspended from Parliament. It's looking like Paul Bristow of the Conservative Party will be winning Peterborough later on this evening. Now that's a big change. This is a seat which is traditionally Labour in recent years. Since 2017, it's been Labour. This has been a seat that had been pulled back by Corbyn's kind of momentum movement that's now falling away from them again. Is this a sign that momentum don't actually have the momentum they used to have?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to wait to see the fallout of perhaps why that momentum has gone. Because, like you say, 2017, Theresa May called the general election on the back of wanting to get a working majority to get her Brexit deal through. But clearly that didn't work out how it was planned to. Jeremy Corbyn came back with a significant rise in support, and that has clearly fallen off the cliff tonight. So, how the Labour Party are going to proceed from here is up for debate.
Well, we got a swing. We've got a swing which I think Chris has been waiting for a while. Is Workington a result has come in? The Conservatives have gained from Labour.
The Swingometer!
I hate that so much.
It is my favourite bit of this night. I have my very basic swingometer here. Now, so we're talking about Workington here.
We are.
Which is a 9% swing to the Conservatives.
Elaborately done there.
I think there's a difference here between what you'll see here and if you're tuning into BBC at the same time, almost at the same time. Jeremy Vine, about 5 minutes ago, was standing in his large green screen studio with a floating swingometer above his head in the clock tower of Big Ben. A bit of a change here. Chris has got his paper here.
I'd say roughly that's about 9%.
On a scale of something to something, I would say it is 9%.
It's purposefully arbitrary.
This is pointing a very good point that Workington has been gained from Labour. It's another change. 2 seats have now moved that direction. Labour have now lost another seat. This is Mark Jenkins, and the person who ran as the candidate for UKIP in 2015 has now won a seat as the Conservative candidate. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time that a UKIP MP or a former candidate for UKIP has actually won a seat after being a UKIP MP, after being a UKIP candidate and not a former Tory candidate. So that's probably very confusing. I've not explained that in the best way. However, Douglas Carswell a few years ago was a Conservative and then became UKIP and won. This is the first time it's gone the other way round. Workington, really interesting there. Seat in Lancashire. I mean, what is your take on this, you two?
Yeah, I think this is again reflecting this whole focus on Brexit being the key issue, and whether tonight is what 2017 was meant to be for the Brexiteers, because 2017 was all set to be the realignment of politics, shifting away from perhaps being Eurosceptic to it being actually realised, whereas now we're seeing this happen tonight. So I think, again, this reflects what we're seeing up and down the country, really.
I think, though, first, we should probably go to Scotland. We've not talked about Scotland much, and we're not aiming to speak about Scotland too much, but it does look like 2 big things are happening right now as we speak in Scotland. Rutherglen and Hamilton West has been gained from Labour by the SNP. This is the first SNP from Labour gain we've seen so far. That's a large swing. I'm going to get the result, the exact swing on that in a second, but that's a large swing there from the SNP to the SNP from Labour. And we've also now got a result in East Killarney where SNP have held with an increased majority there of 25,000 votes is their total there overall, an increased majority there. Well, this is interesting.
SNP are coming along and doing their bit in Scotland. I think it's definitely going to be interesting for the kind of government up there as a total. I mean, the exit poll was very, very strong for SNP in Scotland. I think it was 55 out of 59 seats, which is absolutely huge. And certainly shows that SNP have really, really got their campaign.
We've got the swing there for Rutherglen. It's 7.2% swing from the to the SNP from Labour.
Good.
And I unfortunately don't have a Labour to SNP swing.
You could bodge your Lib Dem one. Orange is similar to yellow, not in politics, but in colour. So in this sense, you could bodge that. But a Labour to SNP swing of 5.1%. We're getting here, not 7%. But regardless, a big change here. The SNP, and they've been going on a lot about things other than independence. Has this helped them in this election?
I think this is definitely going to give Nicola Sturgeon that mandate she wants to go for a second independence referendum. There was talk of this maybe happening if Labour were to get in, and there would be a possibility of maybe a minority or a coalition between the Labour Party and the SNP, whether that would be on condition of Scotland having that second independence referendum. We don't know, and that's not going to happen tonight by those things. But yeah, 2016, Scotland voted 62% to 38% to remain in the EU as well. So clearly they're backing the SNP. Their Tory vote hasn't really been realised. I mean, you had the progress that Ruth Davison made as the head of the Conservative Party up in Scotland. We might be able to see that there's a fallout from that, and whether they've kind of lost some of that momentum. But I think, yeah, going back to this independence question, whether we see Scotland pushing again for another independence referendum when we only had one, 5 years ago, 2014 now. So yeah, this could definitely set a complete different political trajectory for them.
And as we end this hour, we have another result and another gain, Conservative gain from Labour in Darlington. This is Conservatives 20,900. Peter Gibson is now the MP, or will be the MP for Darlington when he's sworn in a few days' time. Jenny Chapman losing her seat there. Interestingly, the majority that Labour had in the last election was 3,280. The majority for the Conservative this time is the same.
It's huge from the Conservatives again. I mean, just having that, despite the fact it's not a absolutely massive majority, considering that they did not have the seat before, huge win. And again, will just add to that confidence that they've got going forwards for this evening. So I think it's good for the Conservatives, but Labour will be not enjoying tonight so far.
I think that's very much the theme of this evening, and that's our second part up. We're back for part 3 of our election coverage, which I'm sure will be very much more of the same. These very similar swings, these changes, these dynamics, which are core to this election campaign in 2019. We're back in about half an hour's time at 2 o'clock for part 3 of our election coverage. We'll see you then.